Brad, why can't we just be together openly? I muttered under my breath as I heard those words from my husband's office. My heart pounded in my chest as I froze outside his door, eavesdropping on the heated conversation between him and Tara, our young business partner. Trust me, Tara, we need to keep this quiet a little longer, Brad's voice responded, laced with a tenderness I hadn't heard from him in years. A sick feeling washed over me as the realization dawned. My husband of 20 years was having an affair with our employee, right under my nose. Memories flashed through my mind, taking me back to the early days when Brad and I had started our tech company from scratch. We were young, ambitious, and blissfully in love, working tirelessly alongside our small team to make our dream a reality. Tara had joined us fresh out of college, her youthful energy and innovative ideas quickly making her an invaluable asset. Funny how things can change so drastically without you even realizing it. As the business grew, so did Tara's influence over Brad. I noticed her overly friendly demeanor, the way she would linger a little too long during their conversations, and how Brad seemed increasingly enamored with her ideas. At first, I brushed it off as professional camaraderie, but the nagging feeling in my gut only intensified with each passing day. Then came the late nights at the office, the unexplained absences, and the sudden influx of suspicious charges on Brad's credit card statements. I tried to confront him, but he always had an excuse ready, dismissing my concerns with a wave of his hand. One fateful evening, I decided to follow my instincts. I tailed Brad and Tara to a luxurious hotel downtown, my heart shattering as I witnessed them entering hand in hand, laughing and completely oblivious to my presence. Funny seeing you two here. Planning a business meeting? I called out, my voice dripping with sarcasm as I stepped into the lobby. Brad's face drained of color, his excuses tumbling out in a jumbled mess. But Tara, that conniving little vixen, simply smirked and said, "Oh, Jenna, don't be so naive. Brad and I are in love, and there's nothing you can do about it." In that moment, something inside me snapped. The years of loyalty, sacrifice, and emotional investment I had poured into our marriage and business came crashing down around me. I would not be the one left broken and humiliated. Not this time. The next morning, I marched into the best divorce attorney's office, determined to fight for every penny of the empire Brad and I had built together. If he thought he could simply discard me for his younger mistress, he had another thing coming. As the dust settled from my initial confrontation with Brad and Tara, I found myself retreating into memories of happier times, back when our dream was just taking shape. Those early days were a whirlwind of sleepless nights, fueled by passion and an unwavering belief in our vision. Brad and I had met fresh out of college, both brilliant minds with a knack for coding and an insatiable drive to create something revolutionary. We scraped together every penny we had and rented a dingy little office space, assembling a ragtag team of fellow tech enthusiasts who shared our ambitious goals. Mark, our trusty developer, was the first to join us, bringing his unparalleled coding skills and a wicked sense of humor that kept our spirits high during the toughest moments. Then came Linda, a fierce legal eagle whose sharp wit and strategic thinking became invaluable assets as we navigated the treacherous waters of startup life. Those early years were a constant uphill battle, with more setbacks than successes. But through it all, Brad and I remained a united front, our love for each other and our dream fueling our persistence. We worked tirelessly, often pulling all-nighters to meet deadlines and secure funding. "You two are crazy. You know that?" Linda would tease, shaking her head as she found us hunched over our laptops at 3 a.m., sustaining ourselves on stale donuts and lukewarm coffee. "Crazy's the only way to make it in this business," Brad would retort with a mischievous grin, his eyes sparkling with determination. And make it we did. Against all odds, our little startup began to gain traction, attracting the attention of major investors and industry heavyweights. With each success, our team grew stronger, our bond forged through countless battles and shared triumphs. That's when Tara joined us, fresh-faced and brimming with ambition. At first, I welcomed her enthusiasm, never suspecting the serpent that lurked beneath her innocent facade. Little did I know that her arrival would mark the beginning of the end for the life I had so carefully crafted. "Jenna, darling, you really should let me handle the investor meetings from now on." She would purr, her words dripping with false concern. "You've been working so hard lately, you deserve a break." Foolishly, I brushed off her comments, blinded by the success we were enjoying and the unwavering trust I had in Brad. But with each passing day, Tara's influence over him grew stronger, her venomous words slowly poisoning his mind against me. As I delved deeper into the betrayal, the memories of our early struggles took on a bittersweet tinge. The very foundations upon which we had built our empire were now crumbling beneath the weight of lies and deceit. But even as the sting of Brad's infidelity threatened to consume me, a newfound determination took root. If they thought they could simply discard me like yesterday's garbage, they had severely underestimated the fury of a woman scorned. I would fight for what was rightfully mine, and they would rue the day they ever crossed me. As the months dragged on, Tara's infiltration into our once tight-knit circle became increasingly pronounced. Her sickly sweet demeanor would quickly sour the moment Brad left the room, replaced by a calculating coldness that sent shivers down my spine. "You're looking a bit worn out today, Jenna," she would simper, her ruby-red lips curled into a patronizing smile. "Maybe you should take the afternoon off. Let the rest of us handle things." I would bite my tongue, forcing a tight-lipped smile as I watched her slink over to Brad's side, draping herself over him like a cheap suit. The way he would beam at her suggestive comments, oblivious to the venom she spewed the moment his back was turned, made my stomach churn. Worst of all were the investor meetings, where Tara would shamelessly flaunt her youth and charm, soaking up the attention like a preening peacock. I could see the hungry looks in the eyes of our potential business partners, their gazes lingering just a little too long on her exposed curves. "Fellas, eyes up here," she would purr, reveling in the spectacle she created. "Unless you'd like Jenna and me to give you a private demonstration later?" The grating laughter that followed those crude remarks was like nails on a chalkboard, but Brad seemed utterly entranced, hanging on her every word. "Tara's just being Tara," he would chuckle, brushing off my concerns with a wave of his hand. "You know how she loves to play up the sex kitten act for these old geezers." But I knew better. With each passing day, Tara's grip on Brad tightened, her insidious whispers slowly turning him against me and everyone else who had stood by us from the beginning. "You know, Mark's coat has been looking pretty sloppy lately," she would murmur, her voice dripping with false concern. "Maybe it's time we brought in some fresh talent, get this project back on track." Before I knew it, longtime colleagues who had bled alongside us were being pushed out, replaced by Tara's hand-picked cronies. Her twisted tentacles were slowly tightening around our company, squeezing the life out of everything we had built. Yet, no matter how many warnings I issued, Brad seemed blissfully oblivious to her machinations, too besotted by her youthful charms to see the serpent lurking beneath. The final straw came when I overheard a heated argument between them, their voices carrying from the confines of Brad's office. "We can't keep funneling money into that offshore account, Tara," Brad hissed, his usual bravado replaced by a quivering uncertainty. "Jenna's getting suspicious, and the auditors are breathing down my neck." "Don't be such a coward, Bradley," Tara snapped, her honeyed tones replaced by a biting venom. "We're so close to having everything we've ever wanted. A little thing like your wife isn't going to stop us now." As the weight of her words crashed over me, a cold clarity washed away the final vestiges of denial. This went far beyond a mere affair. Tara's claws were dug deep into the financial lifeblood of our company, and she was bleeding us dry. In that moment, I knew there was only one path forward: to fight with every ounce of my being, to excise this malignant tumor before it destroyed everything we had worked so hard to build. The gloves were finally off, and I would show no mercy. After weeks of mounting suspicion and piecing together the twisted web of lies, I decided it was time to catch Brad and Tara red-handed. I hired a private investigator to track their movements, and sure enough, the sleazy truth was unveiled. They had been carrying on their sordid affair at a luxurious hotel downtown, using company funds to finance their trysts. The thought of them squandering the money we had poured our blood, sweat, and tears into made my blood boil. One evening, as the investigators' report placed them at the hotel, I took matters into my own hands. Gripping the steering wheel with white-knuckled fury, I tailed them from a distance, my heart pounding with a mixture of dread and grim determination. As I pulled up to the opulent entrance, I spotted their car parked brazenly in the valet area. Taking a deep breath, I strode through the revolving doors, my heels clicking against the marble floors like a death knell. There they were, ensconced in a plush sofa in the lobby bar, Brad's arm draped possessively around Tara's waist as she giggled and batted her lashes at him. The sight of their twisted intimacy made my stomach churn. "Funny seeing you two here," I announced, my voice ringing out like a gunshot in the hushed ambience. "Planning a business meeting, I assume?" Brad's head whipped around, his face draining of color as he registered my presence. "Jenna, what are you doing here?" Tara, however, simply rolled her eyes and took a languid sip of her cocktail. "Oh, please. Spare us the theatrics, Jenna. We both know you've been aware of our little arrangement for quite some time now." Her brazen admission hit me like a sucker punch to the gut. All the months of suspicion and gut-wrenching doubt came crashing down in that moment, leaving me reeling. You vile little snake," I spat, my carefully cultivated composure crumbling. "How could you, Brad? After everything we've been through together?" Brad's mouth opened and closed like a gasping fish, his excuses dying on his lips as Tara calmly stroked his arm in a sickeningly possessive gesture. "Don't be so dramatic, Jenna," she purred, her voice dripping with contempt. "Bradley and I are simply pursuing our happiness together, something you've clearly failed to provide him with." Her words lanced through me like white-hot daggers, laying bare the insecurities and inadequacies I had grappled with for months. But even as the emotional floodgates threatened to burst open, something hardened within me, a steely resolve forged in the fires of my rage. "You want dramatic?" I snarled, leaning in until I was nose to nose with the smirking viper. "I'll show you dramatic, you backstabbing little tramp." Straightening up, I turned to Brad, who visibly shrank under my withering glare. "Don't even think about coming home tonight. In fact, don't bother coming home at all. I'm filing for divorce first thing in the morning, and I'm taking you for every last penny you're worth." Spinning on my heel, I stormed out of the lobby, my head held high despite the maelstrom of emotions raging within. The battle lines had been drawn, and there would be no quarter given. They wanted war? They had just declared it on the wrong woman. True to my word, the next morning I marched into the office of the most cutthroat divorce attorney in town and laid everything on the table. The anger and humiliation still burned hot within me as I recounted the sordid tale of Brad's betrayal and Tara's underhanded machinations. "I want everything," I growled, slamming my fist on the desk for emphasis. "The house, the cars, a majority stake in the company, and I want that little snake Tara out on her ass." The shark-like grin that spread across the lawyer's face told me I had come to the right place. "Consider it done, Mrs. Thompson. We're going to bleed your soon-to-be ex-husband dry." With those words, the legal firestorm was unleashed. I hit Brad with divorce papers faster than he could say irreconcilable differences, leaving him and his little mistress reeling. Of course, the two degenerates didn't go down without a fight. Brad sauntered into the office the next day, Tara clinging to his arm like a remora to a shark, both wearing matching sneers of arrogant disdain. "You really think you can take this company away from me, Jenna?" Brad scoffed, puffing out his chest. "I built this empire from the ground up. You were just along for the ride." "That's right," Tara chimed in, her shrill voice like nails on a chalkboard. "And now that Brad and I are together, we're going to take this business to even greater heights. You won't get a penny more than the courts decide." I wanted nothing more than to slap that smug look off her face, but I held my tongue. They could posture and bluster all they wanted. I knew I had them by the proverbial short and curlies. Thanks to the detailed records I had meticulously kept over the years, documenting Brad's shady dealings and Tara's financial chicanery, I had a legal sledgehammer poised to crush their delusions of grandeur. "You want to play hardball?" I asked, leaning back in my chair with a wolfish grin. "Fine by me. I've got enough evidence of your little slush fund scam to bury you both in civil and criminal charges." The blood drained from Brad's face as his bravado rapidly deflated. Tara, on the other hand, simply glared at me with undisguised hatred, her scarlet talons digging into Brad's arm. From that point on, it was open warfare. Our once thriving startup descended into a bitter battle zone, with each side lobbing legal salvos and vicious accusations. Loyal soldiers quickly rallied to my side, disgusted by Brad and Tara's flagrant betrayal. Mark, bless his brilliant but socially inept heart, became my unofficial tech wizard, quietly gathering evidence of Brad's financial misdeeds. Linda, with her razor-sharp legal mind, tore apart their flimsy fence piece by piece in deposition after deposition. Meanwhile, our board of investors grew increasingly uneasy with the turmoil, watching in horror as the shining jewel of our company became tarnished by the endless cycle of scandals. Still, through it all, Brad and Tara maintained their aura of delusional confidence, secure in their belief that his stranglehold on the business would carry the day. Little did they know, their downfall was merely a matter of time, and I would be the one delivering the killing blow. The day of reckoning finally arrived, and the air in the courthouse crackled with tension as Brad, Tara, and I squared off before the stern-faced judge. Despite their bravado, I could see the first flickers of doubt in their eyes as the weight of the evidence against them became impossible to ignore. "You won't get a penny more than the courts decide, Jenna," Brad hissed under his breath, his lips curled in a sneer. "I control this company. It's mine." Before I could respond, the bailiff called the courtroom to order, and the proceedings began in earnest. I watched with grim satisfaction as my legal team methodically dismantled Brad and Tara's defense, presenting a mountain of damning evidence that left them squirming in their seats. Financial records detailing their embezzlement schemes, caught on tape conspiring to funnel company funds into offshore accounts, even secretly recorded audio of Tara coercing Brad to cut me out of the business entirely. It was all laid bare for the world to see. With each bombshell revelation, Tara's smug veneer cracked a little more, her perfectly coiffed mask slipping to reveal the vicious snake lurking beneath. Brad, for his part, simply sat in stunned silence, the reality of his impending downfall slowly sinking in. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the judge banged her gavel, calling for order in the courtroom. "In light of the overwhelming evidence presented," she began, her steely gaze sweeping over the trio of co-conspirators, "I am ruling in favor of Mrs. Thompson on all counts." A collective gasp rippled through the gallery, but I simply sat back and allowed a small, victorious smile to spread across my face. The old bat wasn't done yet. "Mr. Thompson and Ms. Roberts, your actions have not only violated the sanctity of your marriage vows, but have also shown a blatant disregard for corporate ethics and the law itself," the judge continued, her voice laced with disgust. "As such, I am awarding Mrs. Thompson a controlling stake in the company, effective immediately, as well as the entirety of the marital assets." Tara let out a strangled shriek of outrage, her perfectly manicured claws digging into the wooden bench as she fought to maintain her composure. Brad, on the other hand, simply slumped forward, his head cradled in his hands as the weight of his defeat crushed him. But the judge wasn't finished. Leaning forward, she fixed them with a piercing glare that could have melted steel. "Furthermore, I am referring this matter to the district attorney's office for a full investigation into potential criminal charges related to fraud, embezzlement, and corporate malfeasance. You two have made a mockery of the legal system and the values this company was built upon, and you will face the full consequences of your actions." As the bailiffs led the disgraced pair away in handcuffs, Tara still screeching obscenities through her smeared makeup, I couldn't help but savor the sweetness of victory. They had underestimated me at every turn, secure in their belief that they could simply trample all over me and walk away unscathed. Well, they were about to learn just how wrong they were, and I would delight in grinding their precious empire into the dust beneath my designer heels. With the legal battle decisively won, and Brad and Tara's misdeeds laid bare, I wasted no time in asserting my new control over the company. My first order of business? Clearing out the rot that had infested the ranks thanks to their toxic influence. One by one, I handpicked Tara's gaggle of sycophants and tossed them out on their oversculpted behinds, reveling in the looks of abject horror on their stunned faces as security escorted them from the premises. But Miss Roberts assured us we would be taken care of." One particularly vapid little thing sputtered, her fake lashes fluttering in panic. I simply shrugged, utterly unmoved. Well, Miss Roberts isn't calling the shots anymore. I'd suggest finding a new sugar mama to leech off of. With the dead weight jettisoned, I set about rebuilding our once proud company from the ground up, surrounding myself with trusted allies like Mark and Linda. They had stuck by me through the darkest days of the legal firestorm, and their loyalty would be rewarded tenfold. Of course, Brad and his slithering paramour didn't go quietly into the night. Even from behind bars, they launched a vicious media smear campaign, painting me as a heartless, vindictive shrew determined to destroy everything they had built. Jenna Thompson is a bitter, jealous woman lashing out at her ex-husband out of sheer spite, Tara whined to anyone who would listen, her voice trembling with faux indignation. She's taking her revenge too far and jeopardizing the livelihoods of hundreds of innocent employees. I simply smiled and shook my head at their pathetic attempts to sway public opinion. The evidence of their misdeeds was too overwhelming, the stench of their corruption too overpowering to be washed away with a few crocodile tears. As the weeks ticked by, their once formidable empire began to crumble around them, a self-inflicted wound caused by years of shady dealings and gross mismanagement. Business partners jumped ship in droves, repulsed by the stain of scandal. Investors clamored for their money back, unwilling to be dragged down with the sinking ship. All the while, I watched from the sidelines with a mixture of vindication and pity. These were the same two arrogant fools who had smugly assured me that they controlled everything, that I was simply a footnote in their grand narrative. Yet with each passing day, their grandiose delusions withered further, until they were left with nothing but the ashes of their shattered legacy. And I, the woman they had so callously discarded, was there to sweep up the remains and rebuild an empire worthy of the sacrifices that had been made. The final insult came when their former colleagues, desperate to salvage what was left of the business, came groveling to me with an offer to buy out the remaining assets at a fraction of their worth. I could have dragged out the negotiations, bled them dry as payback for the anguish they had put me through. Instead, I simply smiled, slid the contract across the table, and said, "Just get it over with, boys. I have a new empire to build." As they scurried away with their tails between their legs, I leaned back in my chair and allowed the vindication to wash over me. The ultimate revenge? Reducing Brad and Tara's grandiose dreams to a mere footnote in the legacy I was crafting for myself. In the months that followed, the tables well and truly turned on Brad and Tara. As I thrived in my new role at the helm of my own blossoming entrepreneurial ventures, they found themselves drowning in a cesspool of their own making. The money, the status, the glamorous lifestyle they had so desperately coveted, it all slipped through their greedy fingers like fistfuls of sand. With each passing day, news of their downward spiral made the headlines, a sordid tale of hubris and karma come full circle. Former tech mogul Bradley Thompson faces additional fraud charges, the headlines would scream, detailing the latest revelations of financial malfeasance. Tara, for her part, fared no better. Her youthful looks, once her greatest asset in ensnaring hapless men like my former husband, withered under the harsh glare of public scrutiny. No amount of overpriced cosmetic procedures could hide the haggard, haunted look in her eyes as the walls closed in around her. Disgraced socialite Tara Roberts spotted in seedy motel, the tabloids would crow, plastering unflattering photos of the fallen temptress across their sleazy pages. I'll admit, there was a perverse sense of satisfaction in watching their downward spiral play out in such spectacular fashion. These were the same two vipers who had once looked down their noses at me, secure in their belief that they held all the cards. Now the roles were reversed, and I was the one calling the shots. An inescapable truth that seemed to torment them more than any prison sentence or financial ruin ever could. "You haven't seen the last of me, Jenna," Tara snarled during one of her increasingly unhinged television interviews. "Mark my words, I'll be back on top before you know it, and you'll be the one groveling at my feet." I simply chuckled at her empty bravado, secure in the knowledge that her words carried all the weight of a deflating balloon. She was a spent force, a cautionary tale of what happens when ambition and greed consume one's moral compass. As for Brad, well, his fate was perhaps the most tragic of all. Once a proud, ambitious man with the world at his feet, he had been reduced to a hollow shell of his former self, his spirit broken by the weight of his own misdeeds. During his highly publicized trial, I watched from the gallery as he shuffled into the courtroom, his shoulders slumped, his eyes downcast. Gone was the cocksure swagger, the easy charm that had once made him so magnetic. In its place was a haunted, defeated man, the consequences of his actions finally coming into stark relief. In the end, both he and Tara were handed lengthy prison sentences, along with crushing financial penalties that would ensure they could never again regain a foothold in the business world. As the judge read out their fate, I caught Brad's gaze, his hollow eyes silently pleading for, what? Understanding? Forgiveness? I simply held his stare, my expression impassive, until he finally dropped his head in resignation. There would be no absolution, no second chances. He had made his bed, and now he would lie in it, forever branded as the man who threw away everything for a pretty face and a few fleeting moments of pleasure. As I stepped out into the brilliant sunshine, leaving the sordid spectacle behind, I couldn't help but feel a sense of peace wash over me. The long, arduous road I had traveled, fraught with heartbreak and betrayal, had finally reached its end. A new chapter was beginning, one forged from the ashes of the life I had once known. And as I looked to the future, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I would face them with the strength and resilience that had carried me through my darkest hours. I've found the strength to reclaim my life and destiny, I murmured, more to myself than anyone else, and no one will ever take that away from me again. In the quiet of our suburban home, the words hit me like a bolt from the blue. Isn't the baby adorable? Looks just like you. My heart skipped a beat as I stood frozen, a glass of water halfway to my lips. The voices came from the living room where my husband, Daniel, was on a video call. Curiosity mingled with a creeping unease. I tiptoed closer, peering around the corner. Daniel, usually so mundane in his conversations, had a strange look on his face. He quickly minimized the video call as I entered the room. "Hey, Claire. You're home early," he said, a little too casually. "Yeah, the traffic was light. Who were you talking to?" "Just some colleagues," he replied, avoiding eye contact. The moment lingered awkwardly before I shrugged it off and headed to the kitchen. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. My sister Emily's face flashed in my mind, but I quickly dismissed the thought. She'd been out of touch lately, busy with her own life, or so she said. Later that evening, as I lay in bed, the shadows of doubt crept in. Daniel and I had been drifting apart, our conversations dwindling to mundane pleasantries. Was it just the wariness of our 5-year marriage or something more? The next day at work, I couldn't focus. My role as a marketing executive, which I usually loved, felt dull and unimportant. My mind kept drifting back to that overheard conversation. The more I thought about it, the more the pieces didn't fit. Emily, with her vibrant personality and stunning looks, had always been the center of attention. I, on the other hand, had found solace in my career, away from the shadows of comparison. I decided to call Emily. The phone rang, but no answer. I sent a text, but it remained unanswered. This wasn't like her. Emily was many things, but silent wasn't one of them. That night, I confronted Daniel. "Is there something going on between you and Emily?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. "What? No, of course not," he replied a little too quickly. His denial did little to quell the storm brewing inside me. The following week, I received an invitation from Emily to meet for coffee. She sounded upbeat, but there was a nervous undertone in her voice that I couldn't place. My mind raced with possibilities as I prepared for what was to come. At the cafe, Emily's smile didn't reach her eyes. She fidgeted with her coffee cup before blurting out, "Claire, I'm pregnant." The news hit me like a wave. Pregnant? My sister, who always said she wasn't ready for such commitments? But the shock was replaced by a nauseating realization. The words I had overheard came rushing back. "Looks just like you." I struggled to maintain my composure. That's great news, Em. Who's the father?" Emily hesitated, her eyes darting away. "It's complicated." My heart sank. The unspoken truth hung heavily between us. I had to know. "Is it Daniel?" Emily's silence was all the confirmation I needed. A sick feeling settled in my stomach as the pieces of the puzzle clicked into place. The late nights, the unexplained absences, the whispers in the corner. It all made sense now. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. How could you? My voice was a mix of anger and disbelief. Claire, I'm sorry, I never meant for this to happen. Emily stammered. I didn't wait for her to finish. I walked out of the cafe, my mind racing. This betrayal was a wound too deep, a cut too sharp. I needed to act, to make them feel the weight of their deceit. As I drove home, a plan began to form. Daniel and Emily, they would pay for what they'd done. Revenge, cold and calculated, was the only path forward. I wouldn't let them get away with shattering my world. They would learn the hard way that betrayal comes with a price. The days following the cafe were a blur of anger and disbelief. I moved through them like a ghost, my mind obsessively replaying Emily's confession and Daniel's betrayal. Work became my only refuge, a place where I could bury my emotions in deadlines and presentations. At home, I watched Daniel with a new lens, seeing him not as my husband, but as a stranger. His every gesture, every word, felt like a mockery of our marriage. I needed time to plan my next move, so I kept my knowledge of his affair hidden, wearing a mask of normalcy. One evening, as we sat at dinner, a meal I had prepared with feigned normality, I decided to probe further. So, how's work been? Any interesting projects? I asked, my voice steady. It's been the usual, nothing much. Just busy with meetings and deadlines, Daniel replied, his eyes on his plate. I see. And how's Emily? We haven't seen her in a while, I ventured, watching his reaction closely. He paused, a flicker of something crossing his face. Emily? I don't know. We don't really talk much. I nodded, a cold rage building inside me. The lies were as effortless to him as breathing. As the days passed, I began to gather evidence. I quietly accessed Daniel's phone, uncovering a trail of messages and calls to Emily that confirmed my worst fears. Their deceit was not just a fleeting mistake, but a calculated betrayal. One night, lying in bed next to Daniel, the injustice of it all hit me. Here I was, a successful professional, a loyal wife, reduced to playing detective in my own marriage. Daniel's steady breathing next to me felt like an insult. I can't believe you, I whispered into the darkness, my words a vow of retribution. The following week was a strategic play of gathering evidence and planning my revenge. I contacted a lawyer, discreetly setting the wheels in motion for a divorce that would leave Daniel with nothing. I also started documenting every financial transaction, preparing for the inevitable legal battle. But it wasn't just about the legalities. I wanted them to feel the burn of their actions, to suffer as I had. I began to spread hints of Emily's affair within our social circle, carefully crafting a narrative that would tarnish her reputation. I watched as the rumors took hold, seeing her once-admired image start to crumble. Meanwhile, I played the part of the dutiful wife to Daniel, all while setting the stage for his downfall. My plan was meticulous, a slow poison that would leave him reeling. The final piece came when I discovered Emily was planning a baby shower, the perfect opportunity to expose them, to reveal their sordid affair to everyone they knew. As I prepared for the day, a cold determination settled over me. This was the moment of reckoning. They would pay for their betrayal, and I would be the architect of their downfall. The baby shower was set in a quaint local hall, decorated with pastel balloons and a banner that read, "Welcome, little one." I arrived early, my heart a battlefield of anger and anticipation. As guests trickled in, I mingled, my smile a practiced mask hiding my true intentions. Emily was radiant, unaware of the storm brewing. She moved through the crowd, the picture of blissful ignorance. My resentment towards her deepened with each congratulatory hug she received. Then, as the room filled with chatter and laughter, I found the moment I had been waiting for. I clinked my glass, signaling for attention. The room quieted down, all eyes on me. "I'd like to say a few words," I began, my voice steady. "Emily, you look absolutely beautiful today. Motherhood suits you." Emily beamed. "Thank you, Claire. That means a lot coming from you." I paused for a moment, letting the tension build. "I also think it's important for us to acknowledge the father of the child on this special day." I turned towards her, my gaze unwavering. After all, a baby is a celebration of both parents, right? The room fell into an uneasy silence. Emily's smile faltered, her eyes searching mine for an explanation. "It's just so wonderful that Emily has found happiness," I continued, my voice laced with venom, "even if that happiness is built on betrayal and deceit." Whispers erupted around the room. Emily's face drained of color, her eyes widening in shock. "What are you saying, Claire?" she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm saying that the father of your child is none other than my husband, Daniel," I declared, the words slicing through the room like a knife. Gasps and murmurs filled the air. Emily looked around frantically, as if seeking an escape. This isn't true. Claire, why would you say something like that?" she managed to say, her voice trembling. "Oh, but it is true, dear sister," I said coldly. "I have all the evidence. Text messages, emails, late-night calls. You two didn't do a very good job of covering your tracks." Emily's facade crumbled, her eyes brimming with tears. "Claire, I'm so sorry. It was a mistake." "A mistake," I laughed bitterly. "Destroying a marriage is not a mistake, Emily. It's a choice you both made." The room was thick with tension, the festive atmosphere now a distant memory. I looked around at the stunned faces, my message delivered loud and clear. "I hope you both find happiness in the ruins you've created," I said, turning to leave the shattered celebration behind. As I walked out, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The truth was out, and with it, the first step of my revenge was complete. Emily and Daniel's betrayal was now exposed for all to see, their perfect images shattered by their own selfish actions. The aftermath of the baby shower was like a wildfire, the scandal spreading through our social circles with ferocious speed. Emily's reputation, once pristine, was now tarnished with whispers of infidelity and deceit. As for Daniel, he returned home to find his belongings neatly packed in the living room, a clear message that his presence was no longer welcome in my life. "Claire, we need to talk about this," Daniel pleaded, his voice a mix of desperation and disbelief. "There's nothing to talk about," I said, my voice icy. "Your things are packed. I suggest you find somewhere else to stay." "Please, let me explain," he implored, stepping towards me. I held up my hand, stopping him in his tracks. "Save it, Daniel. I know everything. I've seen the messages, the emails. You betrayed me, with my own sister no less. There's no coming back from that." "But I love you, Claire. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake," he stammered. "Love?" I scoffed. "Your actions speak louder than your words, Daniel. You made your choice, and now you have to live with the consequences." He looked at me, his eyes searching for a sign of forgiveness, but there was none to be found. "Where will I go?" he asked, his voice breaking. "That's not my concern. You should have thought about that before you destroyed our marriage," I replied, unmoved. As he left, I felt a sense of satisfaction. The first part of my plan was complete. Daniel was out of my life, but my revenge was far from over. The next phase was to ensure that Emily faced the full extent of her actions. I contacted a few friends in the media, providing them with enough information to fuel the scandal. The story of the affair between a respected marketing executive's husband and her sister made for sensational news. Emily's name was now synonymous with betrayal. I watched as Emily's social media accounts were flooded with hateful comments. Her once cheerful posts were now met with scorn and disdain. She called me several times, but I never answered. She had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. The final blow came when I learned that Emily had been let go from her job. The scandal had reached her workplace, and they wanted nothing to do with the drama. She was now not only a pariah in our social circles, but also struggling financially. As I sat in my quiet, empty house, I reflected on the chaos I had created. My heart was still heavy with the pain of betrayal, but there was also a sense of empowerment. I had taken control of the situation, and in doing so, I had made them pay for their deceit. In the weeks that followed, the fallout from my revelation continued to unfold. Daniel's attempts to contact me became more desperate, but I ignored each call and message. He was no longer a part of my life, a chapter painfully closed. One afternoon, as I sat in my office, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. Reluctantly, I answered, only to hear Emily's voice on the other end. "Claire, please, we need to talk." I hesitated for a moment before responding coldly. "What is there left to say, Emily?" "I know I've made a horrible mistake. I've lost everything, Claire. My job, my friends. I'm begging you, please forgive me," she pleaded, her voice cracking with emotion. "Forgive you?" I replied, my tone sharp. "You betrayed me in the worst possible way. You and Daniel. There's no forgiveness for what you've done." "But I'm your sister," she sobbed. "Family is supposed to stick together." "Family doesn't do what you did," I retorted. You made your choice, Emily. Now you have to live with the consequences, just like I do. I ended the call, cutting off her pleas. The satisfaction of seeing them suffer for their actions was cold comfort compared to the void their betrayal had left in my heart. A few days later, I received a letter from Daniel's lawyer. He was filing for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. I laughed bitterly at the irony. He had the audacity to file for divorce after everything he had done. I called my lawyer, instructing him to proceed with the divorce and ensure that Daniel wouldn't get a cent more than legally required. The divorce proceedings were swift. Daniel tried to argue for a more favorable settlement, but the evidence of his infidelity weakened his position. The court ruled in my favor, leaving him with little. In the end, Emily and Daniel were both left to face the harsh reality of their actions. Emily had become a social outcast, struggling to rebuild her life, while Daniel faced financial ruin and the loss of the life we had built together. As I signed the final divorce papers, I felt a sense of closure. I had lost a husband and a sister, but I had regained my dignity and self-respect. They had tried to break me, but I had emerged stronger. I walked out of the lawyer's office into the bright light of a new beginning. The pain of the past was still there, but it was now a part of who I was, a reminder of my strength and resilience. In the months following the divorce, I found myself in a period of introspection. The home that once echoed with laughter and shared dreams now stood silent, a constant reminder of the betrayal. Yet, amidst the solitude, I discovered a newfound strength. I immersed myself in my work, channeling my energies into creative projects and corporate strategies. My colleagues noticed the change, often commenting on my unwavering focus and innovative ideas. My professional success, however, couldn't fill the void left by the absence of a family I once cherished. One evening, as I scrolled through my social media, I stumbled upon a post from an old friend featuring Emily. The image was a stark contrast to the glamorous, confident sister I once knew. The smile was there, but the sparkle in her eyes had dimmed. Beside her stood a small boy, his features a painful reminder of the past. Despite the bitterness, a part of me ached at the sight of my nephew, an innocent caught in the crossfire of our family drama. The next update was about Daniel. A mutual acquaintance had shared a post about a local charity event, and there he was, unmistakably thinner, his face wearing the signs of stress and hardship. I heard through the grapevine that he had taken a job at a small firm, a far cry from the prestigious position he held during our marriage. The man in the photo bore little resemblance to the confident, charismatic person I had fallen in love with. The realization hit me then. My revenge, though justified, had left a trail of destruction. In seeking justice for their betrayal, I had altered the course of not just my life, but theirs as well. Emily and Daniel, once integral parts of my life, were now mere shadows, lost and broken by the consequences of their actions. That night, as I lay in bed, a sense of melancholy washed over me. I had won the battle, but at what cost? The satisfaction of retribution was fleeting, overshadowed by the realization that the ties that once bound us were irreparably severed. I wondered if revenge was truly worth the price we all had paid. The weeks turned into months, and slowly the sharp edges of betrayal began to soften. I learned to find joy in the small things, a successful campaign at work, a weekend retreat with friends, the quiet moments of solitude that allowed me to reconnect with myself. In the end, the journey through betrayal and revenge taught me a valuable lesson about the complexities of human relationships and the resilience of the human spirit. I emerged from the ordeal not as a victim, but as a survivor, forged by the fires of adversity into a stronger, more self-assured individual.